Got it.
Hello, everybody. Bonjour, Ani. Welcome. We have our Three Horizons follow-up webinar today. So we're really excited for everyone to be sharing your portfolios of innovation with each other. As we always do, off the top, just a quick reminder on the interpretation and language selection. So if you can click the globe on the bottom of your screen and select the language that you would like to participate in today. If you're bilingual, you can stay in the main space. You don't need to choose a language, and then you'll just hear whatever language is being spoken in. And we've got a few speakers on the call today. So we sent out earlier in the week the plan for the session, and this will be quite interactive and conversational. So just a reminder to everybody that it helps our new interpreters that we're working with today, Carmen and Adrian, if you can try to remember to speak slowly and clearly and to pause, not to kind of jump in when somebody else is talking, because then they have to choose one person or the other to translate. So if we wait till everybody finishes and then the next person speaks, it just makes the translation a little bit more seamless. All right, so our agenda for today is we're going to start off with a couple of highlights from Karen Perla after she met with all of you in April, and Shelby will then take us through the format for our plan to share the portfolios with each other and have a bit of a conversation. Myra will share her screen while we're having those conversations for part of that so that you can all see each other's portfolios when you're speaking to them. And then we'll also paste a link to a Miro board in the chat so you can scoot around in there yourselves as well. And we have almost all of the portfolios there in English and French for you to be able to look at. We'll wrap up after our 3 rounds of conversation with some closing notes, and there will be a chance for you to sign up for some more coaching time with another one of Nourish's partners, Mark Kabaj, who's our developmental evaluator that we've been working with throughout the cohort to talk through some plans and ideas for how you're going to start with your prototyping. So that's the plan for today. And just before we get started, I'll give a little recap of where we've been, because actually quite a bit has happened since we last met as a group. So we first met Karen at the end of March when she introduced us all to the Three Horizons framework, and we had a chance to look at its implications for healthcare and community partnerships around food. And then after that, all of your teams met with Karen one-to-one to actually go through the intervention ideas that you had generated at your place-based retreats last fall, and to begin to distill them into a narrower portfolio of between roughly 5 to 10 innovations that you'd like to start with for prototyping. So we use the Three Horizons frame to think about prototyping as a suite of ideas that work together in concert with each other. And that's to address your wicked problems in a way that recognizes their complexity and acknowledges that no single idea or project or intervention alone will be able to achieve the scale of change that we're all looking for and that we've been talking about. So we at Nourish had a chance to...
Alors, nous avons eu la chance de revoir tous vos portfolios qui sont arrivés à la fin du mois dernier. Nous sommes tellement emballés de voir vos idées.
Today, you'll have a chance to share those portfolios and ideas with each other and discuss some of your hopes and maybe some of your fears related to actually testing these ideas now as we move into the shaping phase of the Clover in our Anchor Cohort process overall. So I do want to take a moment as well to thank Nourish's core funders for their support in making the prototyping grants possible. So submitting your portfolios of innovation to us also unlocked, as you know, a $10,000 prototyping grant for each team. And we had invited our funders to join today, but unfortunately some schedule conflicts prevented them from being here. But we really just want to name and recognize that the Errol Family Foundation, the Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security, and the McConnell Foundation have all been instrumental supporters of our work at Nourish and also the work that you're doing in the cohort. And they're really excited to see the innovations that you're going to be testing. So we'll be sharing them with we'll be sharing with them what you're planning and what's kind of coming up for the cohort after today's call. And they're really excited to learn alongside you. So I hope you'll join me in virtually thanking them for their support. And the last thing before handing it over to you, Karen and Shelby, is I was reflecting ahead of today and just really feeling like this is actually quite a momentous time for us as a cohort. You know, we've spent the last 9 months laying the groundwork for the shaping phase. You've all done such an amazing job exploring your problems in depth and bringing in so many different stakeholders to help challenge some of the assumptions and biases that you might have around those problems, looking at our blind spots in new ways. And now here we are. So you're ready to take on putting those ideas into action. And it's going to be, I think, an exciting few months as we get going with prototyping and we get together in person with some of you in Montreal and Thunder Bay over the summer. As an aside on that point, I think most of you are aware by now that we did make the difficult decision to reduce the number of gatherings from 3 to 2. So we have canceled the Vancouver cohort gathering. If you didn't get that message, reach out to your project lead, or you can get in touch with us and we can fill you in. But really, it truly is a privilege to be working with all of you. We can't wait to meet in person at the other 2 gatherings that we had planned for June and August. And you as a group of change makers are really leading the way in new practices and ways of working that can shape a better future. So we're super excited to have you here to be talking about these innovations together today and just really feel like there's so much potential ahead. So very exciting time. All right, so Karen, I'm going to pass it over to you now, but I hope it's okay that I share that you are recovering right now from COVID at the moment. So you're still dealing with some difficulties relating to talking. And we did give Karen the opportunity to back out of today's webinar to focus on her recovery, but she really wanted to be here with all of you. So we'll just be gentle with you, Karen, and please go on and off camera as you need to, grab water, do what you need to do. So we're really happy to have you here, but recognizing that, yeah, you're not quite through it yet. So thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it to you now.
Thanks, Robin. And I just have to say the Nourish team has just been so amazing.
Oh, I can't hear you actually. I'm wondering if maybe you need to just select the English channel with the interpretation, Karen, and that might help.
Oh.
At the bottom with the little globe option there. Can you see that? If you just choose English, then we should be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Perfect. Okay. There you are. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for the Nourish team for just being so considerate of what I was going through. I think it's been mild, but like mild was still really, really hard. So yeah, that was an experience I wasn't expecting. So, you know, and then I had FOMO about missing out today. So it was just like the tension in my head. So I'm happy to help kick today off. I just wanted to thank Robin and the team and everyone for inviting me into their cohorts and really letting me, you know, engage in the work and your thinking as it was actually evolving, like in real time. So I just wanted to share a little bit of kind of what I took away from the conversations that I had the privilege to have over the past couple of weeks. When it comes to a lot of efforts, when people are starting to think about the future, there's sometimes this tendency for people not to really see their own agency in actually changing it. And this was definitely not what I experienced in the conversations. There was a real sense that this is something in our wheelhouse, in our wheel of influence. Definitely a sense, by no means will this be easy, but these are possible for us to lift up. There actually was more of a sense of, are these the right ones? Are we focusing on the right bets? Are we thinking about the right moves when it comes to what we want to do? To which I would say, you know, it's always impossible to know. Through this work, you've all been asked really to shape the future. And, you know, we'll never actually know what that work looks and will require of us until we take that first initial step. But shaping the future sometimes is less about being right. I mean, ideally, you want to be informed. And I think that this is the beauty of the work that you've done up till now. But it's oftentimes about trying something that feels and looks different and feels and looks good at the same time. And that's what's really going to attract others to what we're doing. I think everyone felt like we were moving in that direction. It was definitely clear that the cohort was really focused on, you know, looking at different solutions because everyone was so hyper local. So like, and context matters, right? Like context is everything when we think about what we want to do and where we want to put our energy. A big similarity, however, that I saw across everyone was that everyone seemed to be really taking a fundamental system characteristic and trying to really destabilize it or flip it on its head, you know, from thinking about how can we shift, you know, who decides what good quality food actually is, to shifting where does good quality food actually come from, to reshaping the purpose of land, to really reimagining the intervention points for economic redistribution. Like these were big changes everyone was thinking about. Again, really interesting to see how different cohorts were really looking at, you know, they went broad in terms of a wide range of ideas to tackle a wide range of issues, while others really targeted kind of a specific theme of issues that kind of wove through all of their innovations, almost kind of as a kind of way to kind of bring them together. What was and will continue to be hard with the idea of the 3 horizons is that it's not about identifying short, medium, and long-term initiatives. It's not about starting with Horizon 1 and then going into Horizon 2 and going into Horizon 3. The idea is really about thinking and acting in the horizons all at the same time. It's kind of like trying to be ambidextrous. It's kind of like trying to walk and chew gum at the same time. Whatever metaphor works best for you. For some, this suggested that we needed to whittle down our ideas a little bit more, be a little bit more surgical. For others, it was more of a hard conversation around, are we positioned to play in all 3 at the same time? And I think all of those were really, really good. The 3 horizons is really about making our choices just really super, super intentional. And so that was really exciting that we were getting to that place in the conversations with the cohorts. Also really interesting to talk through with all the cohorts what they were thinking about in terms of that Horizon 3 space. Horizon 3 really is that, you know, space for those radical ideas that we really want to make irresistible to others. And it, like I said before, it can always feel a little bit daunting. But there's something about the fact that everyone is focused on that hyper-local that I feel makes Horizon 3 much more doable if we can only be a little bit creative around that. I mean, the idea of donut economics, and I shared that with a number of different cohorts, feels like a wild idea out there. You know, this idea of setting sustainability boundaries within which we need to live. And it's really kind of a model that's looking to kind of revamp the notion of capitalism. It's wild. And yet it's become experimental policy in Amsterdam, you know, and so how much easier would that be to think about what that could look like if we set it up around a specific neighborhood? And how much easier would it look like if maybe we could think about that for a specific hospital, right? So the local makes it a little bit more tangible, a little more real, and so a little bit more within reach. And so all of this to say, I'm just super stoked to see where things have evolved to since we last chatted. And I guess it's fishbowl time from all intents and purposes. So I'm gonna hand it off to Shelby, I think.
Thanks, Karen. It's great to hear your insights. I know our team was really excited when we looked at the maps as well. So glad to hear that the coaching was such a positive experience. So today's format, we're going to switch it up a little bit. In the past, our webinars have been sort of one team after another, introducing and then sharing their portfolio. What we're hoping today is that the format we've introduced will instigate a little bit more conversation between teams. So the format, Robin's been calling it fishbowl, Meyer's been calling it a talk show. You can think of it as looking in on a fishbowl or watching a talk show, whatever helps it make more sense to you. But we're going to break the teams into 3 rounds. So rather than going one at a time, you'll go together. So one team will give a little bit of an oversight of their map, and then the other team is like the talk show host. So they're going to ask them a question or respond to their map, and the conversation will go back and forth with lovely Karen participating as well and giving some expert insights. So the rounds will be Vancouver and London, then Toronto and Montreal, and then Northern Ontario, Labrador, and Saskatchewan together. And again, they'll start with one team. We'll bring their map up on the screen. And we've asked all of the teams, we've sent a prompt to the project leads in advance. We'll ask them, rather than outlining your whole map, just answer one of these prompts. So the prompts were, what are you most excited to prototype? What do you think will be hard and why? Or what do you expect to learn? So just give us a little bit of insight into where your mind is at with your map. When you finish answering the prompt, the other team has been asked to be prepared to ask you a question, comment on your map, just get the conversation started. And then we'll hold about 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the flow, for each of these conversations to sort of roll, and then they'll switch the other way. So in round 1, Vancouver will show their map, answer their prompt, London will speak back to them, and then London will show their map, answer their prompt, and Vancouver will speak back to them. When that round's done, both of them will go back into the studio audience, and next up will be Toronto and Montreal. So during those conversations, we're going to ask the other teams to just observe, watch from outside of the fishbowl. But if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat, and we'll have about 10 minutes at the end for teams to ask any other team a question, and we'll start with the ones in the chat. So to get us started, maybe I'll pause here and just ask, are there any questions about this format? Does it make sense? Rachel's got tips here. Oh, tips for interpretation. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, a quick reminder to please try and speak clearly and slowly in one language if you can, and also to try not to speak over each other. That causes a bit of a challenge for interpretation. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, not hearing any questions. So I think we can dive right in. So I'll ask Vancouver, London, and Karen, you can come off of mute. We'll start with Vancouver. Meyer is going to bring Vancouver's map up on the screen. Vancouver, you can answer the prompt, and then we'll spotlight Vancouver, London, Karen, and myself to continue the conversation. I won't participate in the conversation, but I will put up a 2-minute and then a 1-minute so that I don't have to cut you off. You'll kind of know that the conversation is rolling into its time. All right, go ahead.
Awesome. Hi everyone. It's great to see you, and I'm really excited to see everyone else's portfolios. From our perspective, we were very excited about a wide variety of ideas, and that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be the main challenge, I think. But some things that we're really excited to look into, we have quite a bit happening around traditional food access in hospitals, and this spans Horizon 1 and Horizon 2 in the way that we have a stepping stone project, which is meant to be hampers of dried and jarred products in the hospital, and that's going to be done in consultation with local elders. And we're also going to be reaching out to them in terms of what types of traditional food they'd like to see in the community and ideas about sourcing. And there happens to be quite a lot of energy around that in BC in general at the moment. We're really excited about that. Also really excited about some next steps in terms of menu redesign, with some of our sites actually piloting plant-based menus as first or as the default for some of the meals. And we're going to be phasing that in gradually and alongside with a menu redesign. And that really spans recognizing food as a therapeutic intervention that's kind of weaved into that project. And we're also really excited about some of the staff engagement and staff food that we're going to be redesigning. So we're looking into how we can provision low carbon and nutrient dense foods for staff, and that's going to involve trialing of a greenhouse gas emissions label to help people make lower carbon choices. So we're all excited about these different interventions, but a lot of energy on that map. And I'll stop there.
That all sounds amazing. You highlighted kind of the different projects that actually really interested me when I saw your map too. But I brought some questions for you. Mm-hmm. So the first is about the plant-based meals as a default for inpatients. Do you have an engagement plan to make sure that that's something that's supported by that group too?
Yeah, so it's been trialed in one of our sites. And I'll have to speak directly to the lead for that site, but there's been some ongoing patient discussions. And while we're redesigning our menus, we do want to have patient engagement as we're trialing different recipes and as we're bringing in new ideas. So I'll double check with her exactly what the engagement plan is at the moment for this, but I know that they've been having discussions with patients. Yeah. And there remains an option with meat so that it's not mandatory, but having that as a default might increase uptake, and that's what we're really curious to see.
That's really interesting. And I wonder about the healthy and low carbon foods that you plan for staff. Is that within your jurisdiction within the hospital, or do you have to reach out to a retail group and advocate third party?
So it's a mix. It's an interesting mix. There's definitely interest and ability from our provider to do more plant-based foods, especially within the cafeteria. There's a specific physician lunch that we're planning to use as a bit of a launching point for that program. And for those, we're not bound to any third-party provider, so we can essentially reach out to any sources that we want. But we have plans to involve a chef or actually chefs from different backgrounds to come in and advise our main provider for the cafeteria at the moment, and kind of tie that in with the work that we're doing in terms of inpatient redesign, because it's currently the same provider, but all of that is being repatriated to the hospitals themselves at the moment. So it's an interesting time in a changing landscape of who's responsible for the food. That gives us a really nice opportunity actually to make some changes. It's really exciting.
And it sounds like some opportunity to do some food sampling and tasting yourself as a group. So that sounds like a good opportunity too. With our last 3 minutes, I'm curious to hear about your food pantry idea and how you would prototype it. What kind of thing would you be looking for from that test?
Yeah, that's also, I don't know if I can invite one of the members of the group in, if that's possible. I think I saw Andres on the call, not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I can jump in if you like.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. You're a lot more aware of this than I am.
Yeah, so at Indigenous Health, we actually have a team member who's done some procurement of traditional foods across BC. That ranges from mushrooms to roe. And so we're kind of working with them currently to figure out that process, figure out what it could look like, whether it's petty cash or how exactly that could be planned out. But it is still very preliminary, and we're actually just meeting in a couple of weeks to go through in a bit more depth. So yeah, very early on, but it's coming along, and hopefully in the future we'll have something more to report on that. Thanks, Annie.
Yeah, thank you, Andres.
Can I ask a quick question? Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I'm just curious, how are you feeling about those Horizon 3 innovations?
Really excited, a little bit curious. So the food as a therapeutic intervention is something that I'm looking into in the context of my PhD as well. So it's work that's kind of well integrated in different aspects of the project. So about that one, a lot more comfortable. And then the nutrition standards is work that's being done in parallel at the moment by some of our team members who are reshaping how the standards are for inpatients, and that involves having choice be a more predominant aspect, and that's really going to change how menus are done in healthcare. Both tackling the weight stigma and granting legal personhood to people is things that we felt very strongly about. I think it's going to be interesting.
Autour du surpoids, et je pense que c'est important de quantifier ces efforts que nous faisons dans ce sens. C'est quelque chose sur lequel on veut commencer à travailler. On a des liens avec
the senior, special rapporteur for the UN human rights on the human right to a healthy environment. So someone that we will be reaching out to in terms of that legal personhood to land question. Those are early on in the prototyping phase, though, admittedly. And same with the weight stigma. That involves some education and yeah, debunking a lot of myths. So very excited, a little bit like a bit of a daunting task, but a really, really exciting task that we're all very enthusiastic about taking forward.
The countdown is real. I was just going to say, it just really feels, especially that weight stigma initiative, stood out for me as something that was not really evident in our initial conversations. And so I was just curious, like, you know, its role in your work, but at the same time, really felt like a conversation that people need to be having more and more of right now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. We'll move to Amy in Team London.
Hopefully, I think the map was going to pop up for a second. If not, the thing that I wanted to highlight today, the one that I'm most excited for, is actually related to the localization of our procurement. So we had PhD students from the university do an extensive food mile mapping to determine what is our rate of carbon emissions from where we get our food. And it was a lot of work for them to go all throughout the planet where our food's coming from. So that's awfully nice if we could localize it to support farmers, but we want to go one step further and grow on site and actually install a 12,000 square foot greenhouse to do food production. I'm talking too fast for interpretation, I just noticed. So when you look at prototyping something that big, we would like to spend this summer testing on-site growing without installing a greenhouse, but just doing it with in-ground and raised beds. And luckily, the kind of sister partner company of our community partner, Reforest London, are leading experts in urban ag within London. So they specialize in turning city areas into full-blown farms. So we are hoping to do that within the next 2 weeks. We'll probably begin. And the fire department is going to come out and fill up our water holding tank for free. And there's all this stuff kind of coming together. So that was the one I was excited to talk about.
That is so exciting. Can I ask questions? Okay. I had noted that one down as a question that I had, and it sounds amazing. I'm curious, because we've talked about that a little bit, and I'm curious, in terms of the process, like once the food is ready, in terms of the food prep, are there some logistical barriers that you anticipate in terms of additional labor required? Because it's quite different when the salad comes in pre-washed versus from the earth, which is lovely. But I'm curious how the discussions that you've had.
Yes, that's been a huge thing to tackle. So with our current model, so much comes in prepared, right? Salad's a great example. It's already chopped romaine, it's been washed, and it's so ready. With our first phase of growing, both with the garden pilot and with the beginning of the greenhouse, our focus for crops is going to be things that require very little processing. Cherry tomatoes that just need to be washed, berries that easy things. And as we continue into new phases, we're going to do a cost calculation where we say, hey, we're already saving $18,000 a year on cucumbers. I think we can build in some labor to slice them. And so that just comes down in the future to eventually build up all the crops that we're growing.
Amazing.
Can I ask a question? This group, I remember the conversation was really there. There's a really strong waste reduction theme kind of permeating through a lot of these ideas. I'm just curious, what would wild success look like for you on the waste reduction side from all of this work?
Oh, well, our goal is that no food would go to landfill. So even if it's something like eggshells or it's unsafe food that we can't donate, it would go in the compost. But the bigger goal is that where we have overages, because we can't perfectly forecast, that safe food would go to the community. And in that sense, we don't have to be so particular about making sure we prep the exact perfect amount of food, because we know it's going in hungry people's mouths, and that's a budget implication we're happy to accept. The other piece of waste reduction is that there would be a shift in mindset that food is not just a commodity that we, oh, well, that's 5% write-off, who cares about the waste? It's actually a very sacred thing that waste isn't just a number that we're looking to change on paper, right? So a change in philosophy too.
I love that. And just zooming out, it really feels like you're nudging into creating a really interesting circular economy around how food is used and how waste is used at the hospital. So that's great.
I was curious, like you talked about adding sustainability considerations to your menu, and I'm wondering if you've started thinking about what that might look like, what kind of sustainability considerations you want to incorporate, what kind of, like, how will that shift decisions?
Sorry, you're talking about adding sustainability with our menu?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for all time, we only had 4 things that drove our menu: nutrition, finance, operations, and what patients want. And so this is like hardwiring that sustainability is part of the conversation. It's going to look different in many different ways, but as long as it's like 1/5 of the thing we're talking about, that can put decisions over the edge, be it plant-based menus or changing the packaging that something comes in. We can always rely on that piece being part of the equation.
That's awesome. And what's your med pass?
Oh, okay. MedPass builds on food first because the hospital has such a reliance on supplementation. And like, that's just our safety net. Supplement everyone, send them an Ensure, and then it's waste. Or they drink it first and then they don't eat their meal. So MedPass is a system where a small amount of supplement is given by a nurse, and it's actually like supervised, so we know that it was taken to in place of supplementation, and it's outside of mealtime, so it increases the consumption of actual real food.
Amazing.
Big yay. Yeah.
That is fantastic. I will look forward to picking your brains about that one further as well.
Yeah, for sure.
How are you feeling about Horizon 2, out of curiosity? Is this going to be is that going to like be a bit of a stretch for folks in your world?
For which, sorry?
Horizon 2. Is it going to stretch thinking? Is it going to stretch people?
Yeah, I think you and I were talking on our call about how we do come up across a lot of like barriers with other groups and different thinking, and like maybe red tape, you could call it. So for us, like many small things can feel transformational. Yeah.
But the wild success could be huge, right? Especially if we like look at all of these together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's time. Thanks so much, Vancouver and London. That was really great, and really appreciate that you both jumped in and instigated some thoughtful conversation. We will unspotlight you and move to Montreal and Toronto now. And I think we'll start with Montreal. Does that make sense? All right.
Bonjour.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Okay.
All right. So I don't know. So finalement, so I don't know. I think that Annie is there with me as well, but we, as far as the interventions are concerned, already the ones that we put on the one side, it's because it was certain that we didn't have an impact, or we didn't have a power of intervention. We found things to be more complicated to set up, but what we really wanted to site is where we want to mutualize our kitchens. That is allowing community organizations as well as companies of using our kitchens. For example, if they have donations, a large quantity of meat, for example, that they want to make a meal with, well, being able to use our kitchens, but also going even to lending them certain foods, or at least selling them some other foods, because we have access to foods at a very much lower price. So what we thought that we could do was to have a feasibility study to know how this could be done, but we also want to extend this not only to the kitchens, but also to our green spaces. I mean, if anybody needs, for example, a specific place in order to be able to organize a community meal, or we also thought, you know, if we have sports infrastructures, so our idea was really to, because the hospital right now belongs to the community, but it's not seen that way, you know, it's not shared. And we would like to change that. We would like for our hospital to be able to come to a different kind of usage. But we'll see if it's possible as far as the regulation is concerned and the cost that it would also engender internally. And one thing, and I'm sorry, I don't really remember the rules exactly, but one thing that I wanted to present, I mean, do I present one? Do I present two? What more should I talk about here? You want me to continue? Okay, I'll continue. So what I just spoke to you about, of course, I was on Horizon 3 at that stage. As far as Horizon 1 is concerned here, within that idea, it's something that is pretty easy to do, but we did, I mean, in our hospital cafeteria at the CIUS Centre Sud, the tariffs are very low. People can feed themselves at very low prices that are equivalent to certain community restaurants, for example. But this is not communicated, you know, citizens, Montrealers don't know this. So we would also like to be able to communicate this better. Because, you know, we have a cafeteria at the hospital, which are community cafeterias. So that would be a quick win where this would really be about internal management, where we could ally with the communications team in order to have a communication plan and transmit this information. We also had another project, which is really, actually, we don't really know how to set it up, but we wanted to optimize our communication with community groups. So this could perhaps be done through events, but we want to create a relationship because clearly we see, you know, gaps here. And with Horizon 2, a project that we had, and I talked about the, you know, common use of kitchens, what we call mutualization, that could also be set up by other actors, you know, not only health sector actors, but we would like to share, since we have access to group contracts, you know, with all the other CIUS, those being, you know, health centers, long-term healthcare centers, we would have liked to have shared the cost of those foods and to allow community organizations to have access to those lower costs. But this would be more as far as, I mean, it seems to be complicated to set up, but it's not a question of money. It's more a question of regulation, etc. So it is a project that we also set up in Horizon 2. And in Horizon 2, when we had, and I wasn't there yet, but Annie Marquez was there as well, when there had been the deployment of the Solidarity Hospital, there was a map that allows us, people who live through food insecurity, to go eat basically at the Notre Dame Hospital, so one of our hospitals. And that is something that we want to develop in another hospital and try to apply it to other places of the health network, such as the CIUS, which stands for Integrated Health and Social Services Center in French, but also it would allow people living through food insecurity to go buy products that are good for health, that are fresh. We would also want them to be distributed in other community groups, and that for the time being, it's just distributed at the food centers. Annie, did you want to add anything? Is Annie there? Is anybody else from my team? I am there. Oh, you're there. Okay, sorry. I couldn't see you. I know that usually you have a few things to say, and I'm scared that I forgot something.
Actually, we only have about 1.5 minutes left. So I think it'd be great if maybe Phoebe can ask a question back.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I think Jess was going to do this part, but honestly, I'm taking notes because all of these are wonderful innovations that I think we could also apply to improve our relationship to the hospital. So thank you for for these great ideas, which we will poach.
Merci.
Hi.
Okay, yeah, I'm very curious too about like the mutualization of kitchen spaces and how you are kind of planning to do, like, how are you going to kind of put that in place or prototype that?
Je sais pas si... Ok, excusez-moi, est-ce que vous m'entendez en
Okay,
français?
I'm sorry, can you hear me in French? Because I no longer have the translation. Can you hear me in English? Yeah, we hear you, Marianne. Okay, perfect. So it's not that we thought, it's that we are in contact with companies that did feasibility studies for the mutualization. So this is how we believe that we can set it up, or at least not set it up, but to call an external company so that they do a feasibility study for us. And this company does have expertise in this domain. They've worked with the Health Network before, as well as other organizations, because it's true that for us, it would be too much work to be able to set up this kind of a project. We need to go through an external resource to be able to create that link with them. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, yeah, I'm hoping that we can maybe connect with you another time. Yeah, Phoebe and I think are both really interested. That's helpful for now though, thank you.
That's our time. So we'll move to Toronto team's map and with Montreal posing question back or commenting on their map.
So we just wanted to, we did our map a little bit differently where we had some of the issues that we were trying to address. We felt that it was helpful to put our innovations into context, so we kept them on there. So we apologize for the clutter, but I think it makes more sense when we see sort of what those innovations may be helping or attributing to. So some of the things we were really excited about, and also this template was very helpful in kind of reining us in a little bit and helping us to focus more on what things we could do. So some of the things we're looking into that we're quite excited is hopefully a partnership with a nonprofit called the Bowery Project. And they set up milk crate gardens in vacant lots and spaces. So, you know, empty parking lots, empty building lots, those kinds of things. And there has been an empty lot sitting for at least 5 years right at the corner of Jane and Wilson where we are. That would be amazing. So they come and they set it all up. It's easily movable. They talk to the landlords and the building owners to make sure that they can put it there. They grow it. And then the community members are also just responsible for the maintenance of it. And then, you know, should that land get sold, it's all able to be taken apart and moved. So we're looking into that, which would hopefully be something really great, or in different areas in our surrounding neighborhood where access to green space is very low and limited. So working with landlords and business, apartment management to also facilitate some gardening in the apartment buildings nearby as well, because we are a very urban center. So those are some of the things we're looking for. In terms of helping with sustainability and climate change, we're looking into, you know, a continuation of seed saving and preservation workshops, food safety and, you know, food waste workshops as well throughout the apartment buildings in our community, as well as possibly with the farm or at our center, just to help, because we find through our work that a lot of the food security is actually happening with food waste as well. So people have the food, sometimes they don't know what to do with it, or culturally they're not used to freezing food. They don't like to store it, or they might not know how to store it properly. So we just wanted to kind of help expand that program as well. And then container gardening. So that's a big one because a lot of people live in apartments or other shared housing. So those are things we're looking into, as well as garden tours for people, and hopefully maybe offering some incentives for current families who are already gardening to maybe see if they would be interested in donating their extra vegetables to community members.
And then Montreal, you can pose a question back to them, make a comment, Marion or Annie.
Je peux poser une question, Marion, avant que tu en aies une. Je me demandais juste le lien.
Ask a question. Just want to know what the connection is with the health network. Do you have a connection, or what is your collaboration with the health network exactly?
So in our health network, I'm assuming that you mean like the government sort of model that puts groups together, I guess, teams. So in our new model, we're the community health center that is affiliated with a hospital, I believe some rehabilitation centers and other agencies in the area. Because of COVID, we really haven't had a chance to make those connections. And I think rolling out that whole new model has been delayed. So right now, our relationship to the hospital is very strained. So that is definitely something that we would like to work on, is improving our communication and relationship with the hospital, who is part of our network. So that is where this will hopefully come in as well. And borrowing from Marion and Annie's plan is also to implement some kind of therapeutic garden program in conjunction with the hospital, which we think would be nice for mental health as well.
And I get a little more detail on your political cafes. That seems interesting to me. What's that about?
So we had run them in the past. Essentially, it's just sort of enlightening the community members, giving them autonomy to sort of give them a chance to know what situations are going on in our community, giving them a chance to advocate for themselves and for other things. So previous campaigns that they have been involved in would be the 15 and Fairness campaign, which is to advocate for a higher minimum wage. As well, in our area, there is a lot of precarious work. So we've had a factory, like a bakery, that's actually unsafe working practices, and many of the workers have been injured. And so those would be things as well, where they sit, talk together, have a meal, and then maybe, you know, go and do some advocacy work. So protesting, marching, letter writing, talking to, you know, our politicians in the area. So we hope to expand on that as well and keep it going.
Awesome. At one point I was like, are we starting a revolution? Because that should not be in Horizon 1. Okay.
We're very ambitious.
Okay.
Great, thanks both teams. Love to see the crossing and sort of osmosis between your maps, and hope that you'll connect afterwards for those areas that you're overlapping. That's really great to see. So for our final round, we're going to move into Northern Ontario, Labrador, and Saskatchewan. So one after the other, same thing. but hoping that it will just sort of naturally flow to ask questions back to the initial speaker. And once again, just to send a reminder that we're hoping when you're presenting your map, you'll just answer one of the 3 prompts that we had sent you. So I believe they were, what are you most excited about? And that could be a couple of your specific prototypes. What are you hoping to learn? And what do you think will be a challenge and why? So if we can, maybe we'll just start with Saskatchewan, and we'll just give it a moment here for the speakers to get spotlighted and the map to get brought up.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Excellent. All right, it looks like our map is up as well. Thanks for this opportunity. I think that it's been wonderful to hear what all the other teams have been doing. And for us, I think that we're excited about all of the components that we put on the map, but one of our biggest challenges was taking things off to make it doable within the time that we wanted to work within. So, you know, there's other work happening that may get switched in and out of our map as we move forward. And it helped us to know that we can do that as we move ahead. If something really springs out that is an opportunity that maybe we took off of our map, we can put it back on. So for us, I think if we were to pick a few that we're most excited about getting going on, I think probably the food prescriptions in the second horizon at the top there, as well as the regional production map. So they're quite different in focus, but we in Saskatchewan are not very far along compared to, say, British Columbia or Ontario. So for us, that's pretty game changing in our province to find out who's growing what, who's producing what, how to tap into that map. And so that's exciting to us as well. And then I'd say the third one that we'd really talked a lot about was the food purchasing policies and how to decolonize and just kind of look at opening up channels within that. I think all of them will be a challenge if you're wanting to know which ones would be the most challenging, and possibly I think that getting the information for the production map has been, we started on that and it's been very challenging, but you know, we're ready to jump on furthering that with partners across the province. We expect to learn a lot about the province as we do that, and yeah, we expect to learn a lot about our food purchasing policies, how they can open up those channels once we know what those suppliers could be.
Great, now we'll look for commentary from Northern Ontario or Labrador.
Hi, Sandra. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
Go ahead, Sandra. I'm still formulating my thought.
Okay. Thanks, Joseph. Hi, Charlotte. A question that we had when we had looked at your map initially, I guess our initial thought was a lot of what you have going on resembled a lot of, I feel, what we're trying to do, just, you know, in different parts of the country, which was really exciting for us. So one question that we were kind of wondering, do you envision most of this work being done like within your health systems, or do you see, you know, really having to build more on the food organizations outside, like your community partners and, you know, really that community partnership more so? Yeah, that's a great question, Sandra. And I think it's going to be a combination. I think that, you know, our purchasing power within SHA is quite large, but the partnerships outside of SHA are going to be very important to us. And even just initial talks with the Ministry of Agriculture and with the Farm Credit Corporation, like different organizations we might not have talked to previously, have really opened up channels where they are opening them up for us as well to partner with others. So yeah, I think that it's going to be very much a partnership.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's how we see it as well. Like this is definitely going to be, you know, a regional approach for us, and just where they were so similar, it was just, I guess, to learn from each other, right? Because I think, like you said, there's going to be a lot of challenges. You know, I think it's going to be wonderful, but certainly challenges to do this exciting work.
Yeah, I had a similar thought. I guess, you know, one of the key points I can see on your, I don't know if you could put it back up there, but the green, the Horizon 3 was the need, I think, for diverse conversations early, which is, you know, around ministries of forestry as well. That's one of the areas that we have trouble with in Ontario, is like there's food and agriculture, and that's the food conversation, but like interministerial conversations about that. And then of course with the federal jurisdiction intersecting here very heavily, in that, you know, there is a responsibility for Indians under the Constitution, and, you know, that's with the federal government. So we have those conversations as well, and you know, our maps are similar. I'll get to mine, ours. So my question, when I hear the word decolonize, you know, really is around those partnerships and, you know, where you have agency to affect change that would be considered decolonial in nature. So yeah, I don't know if you could speak a little more to that.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding that part. If I get off track, let me know if I'm going down a different path. But what I think we're looking at is folks within the ministry that are our Indigenous engagement and Indigenous connections. And so that's who we've been connecting with. And then they're connecting within the ministry amongst each other. So I'm not really sure what all is going on behind the scenes, but I know that there's a lot of excitement within the different ministry channels that we've worked with. When it comes to the food safety regulation changes, we've been working with the health branch, but then like you had talked about, there's the agriculture branch that's very important to us, as well as the justice and that piece. And so I don't know if I can answer that too much, but yeah, that's our strategy so far, is finding those key people within that are our Indigenous voices that we can work with.
Okay, so that we're going to have a really, I think, projecting ahead an area to consider is around natural resource management and wildlife populations, and the dynamic between, you know, recreational hunters and rights-based food consumption, how that intersects with the institution. You know, all of those kind of questions come to mind. So that's where I said, like, you know, the Crown is good. Operating within Indigenous relations is will help bring that more fulsome conversation, if that helps.
Yeah, well, we also thought about moving that sticky note to the end of Horizon 3, because we know it's going to be a long process.
Great timing. Oh, wow. Okay, so we'll move to the next map. Myra, you can pull it up. I'm not sure which one is underneath. It looks like Northern Ontario. So go ahead, Joseph.
Oh yeah, I have visual issues, so I'm gonna need you to zoom in fully if you don't mind, thanks. And then we can zoom out to include the Francophone one afterwards. So I do have, I think, another colleague here, but I'm not sure. I'll go ahead and then we'll give space to others to speak. Yeah, we, as we've said before, are a collaborative of multiple organizations and really trying to nest in systemic work. So it became very apparent to us that most of our work is in Horizon 3, not as a collaborative, but as individual organizations and individuals working within this food system. So what we have projected ahead, and you know, we've been saying all along, was this idea of like the need to convene in the north, and what this did was help us to position some of it in a different way. So you know, we are going to target having 3 virtual gatherings of our coalitions. That is not innovative in really any way in having a gathering, but our intention is to convene champions and disruptors to help build coalitions afterwards. So our language has changed over time. You've probably heard me say communities of practice as we've engaged with community. That's a very academic term. So we've landed currently on coalitions. And as a quick reminder, those are on public health, environments, education and curriculum, and on procurement, and all of that focused on what we're calling good food, meaning local, traditional, and ecological foods. So Our goal here in setting this is to root in the principles that are, associated with Northern and Indigenous sovereignty along the Horizon 3 trajectory. As I said, most of our collaboration is working in that framework already. And the goal there is really to, during these gatherings, foster that sense of sharing, respect, and reciprocity. Our goal out of this, as well as building the coalitions, is to put together an edited collection of cases, stories, and research as a tool for advocacy. So speaking to those Horizon 3 actions that are taking place, and work within the current framework to redefine roles and create new policies. So, there's many community workers' jobs that are defined by the government, and we're hoping to help communities able to redefine those to meet local needs. All of this, like I said, highlighting the transformed approach to healthcare and wellness that is emanating from place and culture that we see today. So this is not an aspirational one in the center, this green square. This is really the highlight of what's in the edited collections. And as we move forward, recruiting more resources and people and money specifically to, really elevate and strengthen those Horizon 3 things that are happening. So, that resource inputs are shared equitably and in the right relationship, including with non-human relations. We will be developing tools for practical use in addition to the book. So things like sharing policies around procurement or best practices around traditional food and public health spaces. So this is our horizons. You can zoom back out to so that people can read it in French as well. This is also why I asked that question, around like I framed it as natural resource management, but really what it is relationality and how it's reflected in there and what that speaks to. So thank you.
Joseph, I have a question about the edited collection of cases, stories, and research as a tool for advocacy. What's your vision on that, or is that just newly being formed?
Oh, no, it's something we've been talking about for at least 6 months now. So we have a number of case studies and,
Yes, it is.
Sorry, was that the question asker? Oh, no, somebody else. Okay, I could hear somebody taking a phone call. Yeah, we have been working on this. We have, previous to this, we have a number of research undertakings that, have had some publication, but we still have more to share. And then we also have identified a number of things that, honestly, like Nourish has done in the region or has been a part of, or other things. So we have a framework already as well as far as the chapters. So if anybody's interested, in collaborating there, we are hoping to frame it as, in the household, in the community, in the doctor's office, in the hospital, and in the long-term care setting, so that we can really put those cases in a framework that makes sense to like I said, the community practitioner or as a tool for advocacy. Because the main piece that we are not, I guess, like I said, what we're trying to accomplish is to say that like Horizon 3 is not gone, like traditional economy is not gone. The health and wellness from place and culture is very much there. So that's okay, 2 minutes.
So I guess mine's kind of a comment slash question. You had asked Charlotte with regard to talking about the policy change and things of that nature. And you mentioned again that time, where is your team at in that process? And I know my team will be very interested in that, because that's, which I'll tell you about in just a minute, what we see as one of our biggest challenges. you know, so just curious to see or hear what stage you guys are at with that, you know, with regard to the food inspection policy and really that, you know, everything that kind of surrounds that. Have you guys actually started digging into that? And I know we only have a short time, but I'd certainly love to hear even after the fact, you know, kind of if you have the approach and things of that nature.
Yeah, again, there's been some significant previous work. I'll put a link in the chat to the Understanding Our Food Systems project from Thunder Bay, and some of my colleagues were a part of that. But, you know, there is obviously there's a colonial environment in which we're operating, of which we don't have any real agency to affect any change in. So our focus is on actionism over activism. Like, we're not to say this policy needs to change, but more to say to the community worker, this is how you make it work within this framework, right? And so, you know, not to say that like overall our focus isn't there, but like we're seeing places like Indigenous health access centers where that cultural healing and natural well-being is there. And so it's not really a matter of, you know, reviving something dead, you know, all over the place, right?
Thank you for that.
Just have a few seconds left. If Karen, you want to make a quick comment, and then we can move to Labrador.
That last comment, Joseph, actually sparked a really interesting thought in my head around, you know, some of the innovations may actually identify policy as that place where we need to kind of target an intervention. But there's an opportunity that as we kind of launch these ideas, we're learning, you know, you're already working with community workers, right? And there's that learning that can then inform policy, you know, so it may be still, we may be like hitting the same bird with, but from multiple angles is what I'm saying. Like there's some interesting work really happening around policy that's coming from the community and then going into kind of those more formal structures versus really turning that formal structure head on.
Oh, certainly, yeah. And you know, like we have had some success, you know, with policy change over time. You know, the inclusion of forest foods in the Local Food Act in Ontario, for example, is, you know, some of the outcome of advocacy of these collaborative in the past. But you know, it's a violent space too, you know, like it is very, very difficult in it. And, you know, ultimately the land and the community is a generative and healing space. And, you know, it's sometimes it's important to focus away from that. I'm not arguing. I just wanted to explain why, you know, we're really not interested in targeting policymakers in this project.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. We'll move to you, Sandra.
So as I had, I guess, kind of given away what we're going to talk about, we decided to share, I guess, some of the things that we think will be challenges, just because that's a discussion that comes up regularly when we're, you know, having these conversations that the Nourish processes are taking us through. So certainly, as we move forward, we you know, definitely foresee challenges. I think one of our biggest barriers preventing the traditional foods, I'll try and talk slow. Sometimes I talk fast, so just just do something, Shelby, to flag me if I'm talking too fast. You know, one of our biggest barriers preventing the traditional foods from being processed and prepared and served in our health facilities currently is, as we were just discussing, the rules, the policies, the regulations around food inspection and everything that comes with that. So like, for example, currently wild games such as like moose, for example, can't actually be prepared in our health facilities. Like if a long-term care resident or an inpatient would like to have that as a meal, a loved one would actually have to prepare that and bring it into them. Policy change around food inspection regulations and things like that, you know, we know it's going to be difficult because it involves that food safety aspect, right? So it's something that's very, you know, rigid per se. So I guess in our ideal world, our, you know, populations have changed their mindset, and our elders and traditional knowledge keepers would be our food inspectors. Like they have the knowledge, You know, they're the people who have hunted, gathered, cleaned, prepared this food, ensured the food is preserved and stored properly, you know, safely their whole lives. And you know, that has to mean something. We have to engage in that respect, and that knowledge is essentially what's most valuable. So we certainly see that as, I guess, most challenging, but also most important. So it's finding that balance. One of our members of our team put it really nicely yesterday. It's finding that balance between the science and culture, like honoring the knowledge of the elders, but yet combining the science knowledge with our traditional knowledge. Per se, you know, financial, of course, will definitely be another challenge. We put some very ambitious things in here. Looking back on, I think we might have still been in our the exercise that we do with Nourish before that, the transition design, where we were like way out there reaching for the stars for some here, but you know, dream big, and hopefully we'll get there. If it's not within a short period of time, hopefully in a little longer period of time. You know, specifically considering when I look at the financial, we're looking at like considering capital upgrades and paying local hunters, increased cost, you know, when we're sharing traditional foods, whether it's across provinces or even within our province, transportation alone is very costly. In our Labrador-Grenfell Health region, the geography, you know, certainly creates many barriers for us and transportation challenges, because we're not big in population compared to a lot of areas, but we're very big in land mass and you know, stretched all over with challenges connecting us all. You know, the logistics for just that transport. So, you know, we know we're definitely going to have to work with government to decrease that cost of transport somehow. There are, you know, currently some programs in place, Nutrition North Canada, that supplement, but it's definitely not sufficient enough. And again, you know, looking at structural upgrades and things like that, we have to be realistic where we're living. Like the cost of homes here, you know, is incredibly expensive, but also in short supply. Oh goodness, I'm talking too much, Shelby. Okay. So I guess, but that's a few of the things, the challenges that we see. And also, I guess, you know, that whole change management within the healthcare as well can also be challenging sometimes. But one thing that we want to kind of focus on is that it's organizational throughout all of our region, not just kind of, you know, little passion projects in one specific area type thing, that whole regional holistic approach. I will stop.
Sandra, that's great work. I'm really impressed with your work as well as the Northern Ontario work. Where do you see starting? Like, what are your few things you're going to start with?
So our start is actually, which we're in a demo right now. We're starting with the survey around preferred foods within healthcare. So our thought around that is we've got a very draft version of that done right now. So our goal is, I guess, mainly we want to know what our clients want. So we may be, you know, reaching for the stars to get something for them that they actually don't really want, right? Like we maybe think, oh, they want seal and really trying hard to get that when that's not really, they would much rather have rabbit or moose or something like that. So that's our starting point to give us a guide on what we, you know, can really focus in on trying to provide for the residents that we have.
I'm curious.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just curious how so I have my thoughts on this. I'm curious about your thoughts. Is climate a headwind or a tailwind for a lot of these innovations for you?
That's a really good question. Climate is probably holding us back. We, you know, climate is certainly a barrier for us because, well, okay, and I'll use, there's several, you know, I guess, places that climate comes in all of this, but I'll just use gardening as an example because that's one that's very simplistic. But right now we're still covered in snow. So where most people are planting their gardens and getting things ready right now, that realistically, you do not put anything in the ground here until after June 15th. that's our like magical date. So when you look at a growing season here, like it's really only those core root vegetables, greenhouse and things can be done, but even still our season is so short. And even when we look at, when we talk about like our traditional hunting and things like that, we've had so much different climate change around here, like even with our ice, over the years, some years it's been breaking up like way earlier than others and others not breaking up. So even, for the hunting, but also the transport, because some of our northern communities heavily rely on, that for transport, but then vice versa, if it's not freezing up, our boat system, which brings food to our coast and stuff. So yeah, climate definitely has an impact. I don't feel like it's truly in our favor, but, we've lived here. Those of us that are involved, we're born and bred here. So really it's all we know. We look on the outside and kind of wish it was easier at times, but that's always been our challenges, I guess, per se.
Yeah,
and to your question, is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think it's an interesting exercise to also reframe it in like, what is the opportunity that like the climate reality is creating around some of these innovations? Because I think that it can also be a headwind. And so just kind of a thought exercise.
It does. And that's one thing that does come up in our conversations. And I don't know, there's one member on our team that is really good at reminding us of this, is eating the foods in their time. So like really focusing on eating and enjoying those foods when they're in season. So when cod is in season, we eat it and, hone in on that time. Then as we go through, when berries are in season, we thoroughly enjoy those. So really focusing on providing those foods to our residents when they're more readily accessible and in their, prime or the best quality as well, right?
We're just a little bit over time, but I want to give Joseph, if you have a quick comment or a quick question, we can close out with that.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess there is some precedent as far as, some legislation and other things like the Menayawan Hospital here in Northern Ontario, which did allow for traditional food to be served. But, there's a lot of challenges as far as, like supply and what's wildlife populations and cultural appropriateness. So, my ears perked up when you said purchase traditional food, but, I think this is not the few seconds to talk about it, but I think that looking to some other places and see challenges that how they've addressed some of those things might be a good place to look.
Thanks, Joseph. I look forward to chatting with you a little bit more in the future. Actually, after our team meets, I think you could be a good resource for us on some things that we're looking to do.
Great. Well, I love seeing again this osmosis between the teams, and I hope that you will connect and build and help support each other to grow these ideas and prototypes. But it's been so great to hear from all of the teams, and really appreciate all of you sharing what your challenges are, what you're excited about. We've left about 6 minutes here for teams to ask questions outside of their rounds. So just to keep things a little bit organized, it would be great if folks have a question to use the hand up function, the reaction at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and feel free to pose a question or a comment to any team within the round you're in or outside of it.
Shelby, I also wanted just to correct myself from earlier, because I did see that it looked like Laura from the Arrow Family Foundation is on our call today too. So Laura, I don't know if you're still with us and if you'd like to share any reflections on some of what was shared today, but you're welcome to do so if you'd like.
Hi, well, I just, this is the first, I guess, real personal experience I've had hearing from the various teams. And it's really exciting because when we were going through the application process, I guess, for the next cohort, it was really hard to make decisions. Some were real standouts. And obviously those are the people who are here today. And it's just really great to hear how the projects are rolling out, you know, from the initial project description. So and all the, I mean, it's so evident how thoughtful all the teams are working together and being in their actions, and how the sharing is going on between the cohorts. I think that's something I was really hoping to see. So it's great to hear others getting inspiration from others here. So I've really enjoyed hearing everyone today.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, it makes it so real listening to what you're talking about now, and thinking about these ideas that have been forming and changing and evolving over the last several months, starting to really take shape and come to life. And listening to the talk show fishbowl format today, I just feel like it kind of brings me there into each of your settings to be able to picture some of these possibilities. And it's so inspiring thinking of the change that's possible. So yeah, I would echo that absolutely. And it's been a bit of a long journey kind of getting here. And now it feels like we're really getting into it, and it's becoming so much more concrete, and we can see exactly what this will mean with the complexity of what we've been talking about for the last several months. So yeah, thank you from me as well to everybody today. We have a few more minutes for people to chime in through the chat if you want, or to share any comments coming off mute. If you can't find the raise hand button, feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in. I'll hold a bit of space for that one more time before we move to wrap up.
Just a few comments in the chat that folks loved hearing from everyone's innovations and maps, loved the format. Looks like we're not going to have other questions here, but Karen, you unmuted, so I'll let you make a final comment and then pass it off to Robin to close up and give next steps.
Yeah, I mean, I actually was going to ask a question, but I think it's a hard one. So maybe a thought piece for the different cohorts to take back. I was just curious about, of the innovations and the cohort work that you're doing, which one is the dark horse? You know, which one is the one that most folks aren't looking at right now, but if it wins, it's going to be the most phenomenal thing to change the work that we're doing right now. So I think that that's an interesting piece to think about at your next meeting. Dark horses often are the most disruptive things that we often aren't looking at because we don't think they'll actually happen. But when they do, they're often a game changer, and they can happen, to my mind, in any of these horizons, depending on where you're at. So I'm just curious about what you think the dark horses in your cohort.
Great question. So maybe not one for everyone to go and answer now on the call, but really good to leave you with in terms of the conversations that you'll have coming out of today and over the next couple of months. And so that's great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much to you, Karen, for all of your thoughtful contributions and helping us to frame things up using this 3 horizons lens. I hope everyone has found it beneficial in terms of thinking about, you know, to use some of the language from transition design as well, developing these ecologies of interventions, recognizing that wicked problems cannot be solved through 1 or 2 isolated projects on their own. That's really what we're trying to support by introducing these theoretical backbones to the work for you to take and run with, is that thinking about how we can integrate solutions together and approach these problems from many different angles at the same time, and thinking about those different scales of change that we can move towards over time, and that there's value in all of them. Horizon 1, 2, and 3 interventions all have their place. And I'm really encouraged to see that everybody is thinking about all of those things together. And that's really evident through what you've shared with us and what you talked about today. And again, a big thank you to our core funders, including the Ariel Foundation here today and Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security McConnell for the prototyping grants and making those possible, because I think that little bit of seed funding will be able to help you bring these interventions to life in a really fast-paced kind of way. So not being held back, maybe you can tap into things that are a little bit more difficult to fund through these grants to be able to get things off the ground and show the potential potential and explore these innovations in a way that you can generate some real-time learning. So really excited to see what you do with that. And on that note, I do just want to mention, and we'll put a link in the chat for you now, which is that we've got, so you know by now that with the cohort, we're kind of setting up different coaching sessions with different expertise to be able to help you think through the work that you're doing. And so the next round of sessions that we're making available on offer are with our developmental evaluator, Mark Kabash. And these opportunities will be a place for you to think about what your goals are from the prototyping, and are you looking to implement a new idea, or is the goal actually around some of the interventions to disrupt the system and show that new pathways are possible? So he can help to ask some of those questions to make you reflect on what you're looking to achieve and how you would identify success with the process. And also we'll be able to, as we start to understand what you're doing a little bit better, try to link you in with relevant tools and supports that could be helpful for you in that learning journey. So for instance, back in September, we had talked about food security in particular, and knowing that that's such a strong thread through many of the different interventions that the teams will be testing. The Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security does have a measurement framework tool that could be very useful for you to be able to check in with and understand those longer term outcomes that you're moving towards achieving. And so other tools like that fit differently with the different interventions that you'll be testing, that can be a link that we at Nourish and Mark can help make, so that you can kind of maximize not only doing the prototyping, but understanding and being able to show yourselves and others what that means for people that you're trying to support with these changes. So if everybody is able to sign up for one of those sessions, I don't see it in the chat yet, but maybe Rachel and Mark can put it there. So Mark has held some time at the end of the month of May, 3 full days, and any times within those days are fair game. Just maybe take a look to see if that time has been taken by another team, but we're just inviting you to sign up for an hour with Mark in that period to be able to talk through some of that and the next steps for prototyping. And then we'll also be sending out a package to those of you attending the Montreal gathering to be able to prepare for that gathering. So just some, the program at a glance and what to expect, what to bring, what our COVID protocols will be, those sorts of things. But in particular, we know that we'll be exploring the prototyping again in more depth at that gathering and again in Thunder Bay in August. So those conversations with Mark will be a helpful connection point to, maybe some worksheets or something that we can give you to be able to think through preparation for that gathering. So there's more to come on that, but really we're now in that shaping phase. So over the next almost year, this will be the focus, is trying out these ideas, testing what you want to do, seeing what's possible, seeing if it's leading to the kinds of outcomes that you want, and then also being prepared to let go of things that maybe you thought could work, but aren't panning out as expected. So there's also some freedom to do that. And we hope that those grants will help you to be able to try that and not feel overly committed to something just because it's in your portfolio. So there's a lot of flex and room to experiment here. And we're really excited to see where that goes. So with that, I think I will wrap up our webinar for today. It will be recorded and we'll share that link out with you again, and we'll share it with others who weren't able to be here today. But just a really big warm thank you again to all of you for being here, for your enthusiasm and commitment to this work. It inspires me all the time. And I really look forward to connecting with you again in Montreal and beyond. So thank you.